Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I'm going to be doing another of my In the News shows, but today it's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to focus on one company that had news out today, which is Goliath. And what I want to start with, I'm going to share screen here. And let me just get this up. Okay. So I'm going to start with why I'm so excited about and impressed with Goliath Resources. Starting with where they're located, which is in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia in the northern part of the province. And this is a place where there's been just spectacular mines for on and off for over the last 100 years or so. And what characterizes it is a lot of the mines in this area are world class. They come with some of the most richly endowed rock you're going to find anywhere in the world. And recently, what's been interesting is that Newcrest got very involved in this area. And then recently, Newcrest is being bought out by Newmont. And so it's got the attention of some pretty big companies, and rightfully so. But why I originally got interested in the area was before I actually even got involved in working in the stock market in 1993. Back in 1988, around that time, Murray Pezim was making a lot of noise because of the, well, he always made a lot of noise, but he had made the big discovery of Hemlo and followed that up with the second major discovery, which was Eskay Creek. And this was creating a lot of excitement in the mining sector back then, and also in the media. Murray Pezim was not shy when it came to the media, and they loved talking to him about what he was doing. And it was a very exciting time in British Columbia for and having grown up in Vancouver, it was all over the papers on a constant basis. And so that's what really when the name the Golden Triangle came about. And so it's a geological region that, as I said earlier, is well known for very impressive discoveries, big mines, very high grade mines that are very profitable to mine, even when gold was a lot cheaper than it is now in the case of Eskay Creek. And very super high grade. And so that's sort of why I like the Golden Triangle, and it's treated me very well over the years. I've only ever featured a handful of companies from that area, but a couple of them turned out extremely well. GT Gold was one of those companies that I originally started covering it when it was around a 50-cent stock. They had tremendous success and ultimately were bought out at $3.85. So that was one of my Hall of Fame picks in the Golden Triangle, if you will. And another was Pretium. Pretium found an extremely high-grade gold and silver deposit at Brucejack, and ultimately they had their trials and tribulations, but I stuck with them from the time that they were about a $3 stock and kept banging the table on them all the way up to a $9 or $10 stock, and ultimately they were bought out at $19 a share. So those two were very successful picks for me in what was then known as my Allan Berry reports. I subsequently changed the name a few years ago to the Rocks and Stocks News, but those two were great picks that turned out very well. And I think in Goliath that we could have another big success story. They are currently at about a $71 million valuation. and not trading very much above the 52-week low. That 52-week low was hit prior to them starting their drilling this year. And since then, it has been firming up. And based on the news that they've had out since they started drilling again, or actually even before they started drilling, I think that they're on to a very impressive success story of the future. Okay, so let's go over to their news release section. And want to point out a few things here that that I think are quite important when you're doing your research on Goliath. So here was their, let's start in January 9th, 2023. They intersected 13 grams over 11 meters, averaging 6.3, or the sherbet zone itself averages 6.31 grams per ton of gold over 6.88 meters. Then they announced that confirms extensive porphyry feeder source at depth for this gold silver mineralizing fluids at sherbet. So what this was they had done some really smart people at the Colorado School of Mines had done a petrography report and talked about the potential that there was a big feeder source in this system and are caused the sherbet zone and other zones associated with it. So that's an important one for you to take a look at. And then they did a metallurgical study with very good metallurgical data. You want to check that out. Then they did a brokered private placement of $8 million that was increased to $9.65 million, giving them a lot of money to do the work that they had planned for this year. And then shortly after announcing that financing, they mobilized in mid-May for an 18,000 meter drilling program at their sherbet area, as well as on the gold swarm zone at the Golddigger project. May 24th, Goliath drilled 2 new targets at Lucky Strike. So this is another project that has a lot of potential that they talked about. Then on June the 12th, they announced that the drilling was underway at Goliath's extensive high-grade gold, silver discovery, and then they reiterated that they announced that they were going to drill at the gold swarm zone. Now, what's interesting about that is gold swarm is several kilometers from the sherbet area, and they're seeing very similar things at gold swarm, which is quite impressive, because if you look back at that study that was done by the Colorado School of Mine, they're talking about a big, powerful feeder system. And if it's, what fed the sherbet area and also gold swarm, that could be just a massive feeder system. So then on June the 19th, they announced that visible gold in Goliath's first hole of their 2023 program at the Golden Gate feeder zone, which is part of the sherbet extension, and that it remained wide open. And then on July the 5th, Goliath drills visible gold in multiple holes over 1.5 kilometer and discovers new 6.5 kilometer trend of mineralized shears that remain open. Again, this is, you want to go back to that Colorado School of Mining report, because, again, this is suggesting that there is a big, powerful feeder system or heat engine for this entire region. On July the 12th, Goliath drills visible gold and 12.47 meters of highly mineralized quartz sulfide rich breccia at the Sherbet Golden Gate feeder zone. Again, I'm going to show you some maps later, but this Golden Gate feeder zone is really emerging as something quite spectacular, or at least has the potential to be. On July the 13th, Goliath drills more visible gold at Sherbet Golden Gate feeder zone and 13.65 meters of highly mineralized quartz sulfide rich breccia. And then they announced earlier today, that they hit 3 separate intervals of visible gold drilled at Goliath Sherbet Golden Gate feeder zone and 12.73 meters of mineralized quartz sulfide rich breccia and at the Golden Triangle. So then you see this, they give you some images here of the where they hit the visible gold. So you've got it at 72, 83, and 102 meters. And there's sulfides that seem to be associated. As you can see, it's looks to be right in the sulfides there. So that's really good. They said that this is the 6th hole drilled in the 2023 season from within the Sherbet Golden Gate feeder zone to intercept visible gold and significant widths of mineralized quartz sulfide rich breccia. And then they give you a map here, and it shows you all the red ones are where they're going to be doing new drilling this year, and the other ones are where they had done past drilling in 2022 is the blue, and I think that's purple, if I'm not colorblind, is the 2021 drilling. They said that it collared in from pad 2 TS3, intersected 12.73 meters of mineralized quartz sulfide rich breccia, interpreted it to be the Bonanza Shear, located 125 meters to the southeast of pad A from the 2022 drilling season. Pyrrhotite mineralization occurs throughout, ranging from disseminated to fine stockwork, and sphalerite occurs with pyrrhotite in the quartz breccia from 43 to 55 meters. Visible gold was observed again at that 72, 83, and 102 meters, respectively, within quartz veins hosted in highly altered and locally brecciated intermediate to mafic volcanic rock. The quartz chlorite veins are 1 to 8 centimeters and found sporadically throughout the section that contains pyrrhotite, sphalerite, and galena. Those assays are pending. Then they show you some, here you can see some of the quartz that's in there that they're seeing that visible gold in. 8 holes drilled to date from within the Sherbet Golden Gate feeder zone contain visible gold. Visible gold assays. So this gives you an indication of the correlation between the visible gold and the grades that they saw in 2022 when this Golden Gate feeder, potential feeder zone, came into the picture. And as you can see here, 24 grams per ton of gold over 11 meters. So a nice thick intersection of high grade. Included in that were 38 grams per ton of gold over 7 meters and 44 grams over 6 meters within the Sherbet Golden Gate feeder. Then this hole 49 value visible gold and 21.3 grams per ton of gold over 7.77 meters. So very good indicator, the correlation between seeing visible gold and then returning high grade in the assaying of that core. Then they give you more details. This company is doing a great job of detailing the work that they're doing, which is very impressive. And it's no coincidence that they have a very impressive project, and that's why they always seem to have impressive results. Now, what I also find important about this company is that their geologists, they've only had a few seasons on this project, and each season might be 4 months long or so. So, let's say about a year's worth of actual exploration. And they're hitting gold on 97% of their holes. Why that's important is it tells you that their geological team has excellent understanding of the zones. And secondly, it tells you that there's excellent continuity. And thirdly is that its predictability is very high. So they got a good group of geologists doing the program. They've got a good handle on it, and the system is predictable, and they're doing a lot of drilling this year, 18,000 meters, that I think that they're going to have a lot of good stuff to talk about. So now I'm going to go to their corporate presentation because there's some really good information. As they talk about here, they're on track to discovery in the Golden Triangle. I think that's an understatement. What I think that they have is the most important new discovery in the Golden Triangle in many, many years. And it's a property that was covered by glaciers. So this company is the first company to go in there and be able to see the rocks, and therefore make a discovery. And a lot of discoveries are made. Newmont did a study years ago where they studied all the various different mines throughout the world, and often the average was it was the 7th company to go in there that actually made the discovery of the mine. And in this case, Goliath is the first to put their eyeballs on it and the truth machine on it, and they're having a lot of success with their drilling. So here's a little bit about the team that's involved. Really good team involved, led by Roger Rasmus. And they also have some very talented geologists. They're a sponsor of my report, so I've been able to do a lot of coverage of them and have interviewed their management and their geological team in the past. You can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And I'm very impressed with the team of guys involved, and you can check out those interviews, and I think you'll clearly understand why I'm impressed with the team. This map shows you where some of the deposits are in the Golden Triangle. Here specifically is the Sherbet, not very far from Kitsault, with the potential to use this water as access or this nearby road. So very good access to the project, which is important. Okay, so this is the Sherbet discovery. So how it kind of evolved is they saw this red line, which is where the Sherbet zone actually comes to surface. Then they did a lot of drilling in around this area, and they found that the Sherbet zone is very big, and then on top of it are stacked zones that are very important as well. And you can see this purple line here. So here's the top of the mountain, and you follow this fault, and a lot of the high-grade juicy stuff is over here, but they've actually drilled some visible gold on the other side of the mountain, which is quite exciting. And so you've got these two faults here that are very important, because that is the likely conduit of how that gold mineralization got into the Sherbet zone. So they were spending a lot of time drilling in here because they were having a lot of success. And then you can see this dashed line here. This is another fault. And last year, I think they drilled one hole into this area and hit some very spectacular stuff. And what got me excited about this is that this was on the eastern side of that fault, when most of their gold mineralization was on this west side. So This is a very exciting development. So as you can see here, here's the sherbet where it comes to surface, and you can see in that previous line. Then they've got this big sheet of mineralization with an average grade of 6.88 and or 6.88 average intersection and 6.31 grams per ton of gold equivalent in that. And then on top of that, there's more sheets of zones of mineralization as well. And then they've got this interpretation of the Bonanza shear, where they have an average grade intersection of 5.31 grams per ton gold, or meters of intersection, and 2.7 grams per ton of gold. So as you can see, this Bonanza shear is cross-cutting the sherbet zone. Here is another map that gives you a really good idea of what excites me. And here you've got this one fault, here you got a parallel fault, and then you've got this other fault where they're getting a lot of good mineralization on the east side of that fault. But what's interesting to me is that you follow these faults down and they cross-cut. They come to a coalition of those, and then you've got some other faulting that cuts across here. And I would hearken back to that report that I was talking to you earlier about, which is the report by the Colorado School of Mines. And so where these come together is a likely candidate for where that mineralized, the feeder could be coming from. And even if you look at the sheets of mineralization, they're coming down the mountain, all in the same direction towards this area. So you've got a lot of evidence that not only do they have a lot of high grade in this area, you could extend it over to here now, all the way over this other side of the mountain as well. But you've got this feeder zone potential where these faults come together, which is very exciting to me. And here they talk about Sherbet's extensive porphyry feeder source. This is a beautiful example of sulfides. And look at the grades that they got off of this float. 924 grams of gold, 920 grams or 29 ounces of gold, 3,000 grams of silver or 97 ounces. And drill targets are located within the newly identified high-grade Golden Gate feeder zone. A number of 800-meter holes will be drilled near the valley floor. I'm really excited about that because that's where I think all the faulting and the mineralization is coming together. And here they talk about angular float samples with those grades. And why angular is important is because glaciers, if it was moved a long distance from the glaciers will create the rocks to get rounded. So when they're angular, it suggests that they came from a very close proximity. Here's some of that visible gold that they talk about. Here you can see all the drill hole locations that they're over here on the other side of the mountain. They've hit visible gold, and over here, so that's like over almost 2 kilometers distance between where they're finding visible gold. Here they give you some more of this quartz sulfide breccia. So you're seeing the quartz and the breccia sort of mixing together. And this is where they're finding good mineralization. So again, that sulfide, where that sulfides came from, is a very important part of this story. And I think they're very focused on trying to find where all those sulfides are coming from. And then they talk about the visible gold in their first hole of 2023, Sherbet extension open, first interval, the kinds of rocks that they're hitting. which are important to the mineralization of the system. Here again, you can see the 2023 holes are in green, the 2022 holes are in red, and the 2021 holes are in black. So here's where they sort of focused at the start, because they were trying to get close to that outcrop. And then in 2022, they started stepping out with great success. And then in 2023, you can see where they're focusing on. Some of this is infill, some of this is extending over on the other side of the mountain and getting some holes in close proximity to the faulting. Now, I think that what they've learned over here is going to help them over here, because they can get a sense of the zonation of grade relative to these faults, and that will help them focus in on where to follow things on the other side of the mountain. Here is the Sherbet geological overview and the discovery outcrop where they first started drilling near, and more good data, outcrops and surface samples. So, you know, this is why when you can see, it's kind of like seeing a cross section of the whole deposit, and why this is predictable. They see a lot of mineralization on the surface, and then they can follow that down, which is very important. Here's some of the core where they're highlighting siltstones, sandstones, and then what the mineralization in the shear zone is coming from. And as you can see, quartz and breccia in there, quartz and sulfides in there, and over pretty significant thickness as well. Here's their gold swarm discovery. And so here's Sherbet, and then away over here is their gold swarm discovery, where they're the same way they went about finding the Sherbet zone, they're applying over to this gold swarm zone, which, you know, gives them the potential, the realistic potential to find another deposit. But when it looks like what they found at Sherbet, and you've got this report by this Colorado School of Mines that they think there's a big, powerful gold or metals mineralizing system that pumped everything into this system, you're looking at 4 kilometers from these two. So again, more evidence that that report done by at the Colorado School of Mines makes sense. And here they talk about high-grade gold and silver exposed at surface with mineralization similar to the outcropping Sherbet zone. Outcropping zone extends for 450 meters by 150 meters, dipping at 80 to 90 degrees, with 650 meters of surface relief. So when you're looking at a side of a mountain, you kind of get an idea what the cross section of that mineralization looks like. Alteration can be traced for 1 kilometer, remains open. Some of their channel and grab samples are returning much like they did at Sherbet. Here you can see some of the float or a channel cut from Sherbet with very nice grades. And then over here you see a sample with mineralized quartz breccia. Same idea as what you're seeing over at Sherbet. Here they give you some ideas of where the outcropping is happening and how they can follow it. And it's the same story as Sherbet. This is where you can see the gold swarm drilling plan. So they're tagging some, getting some holes into it this year. Newly discovered mineralized Sherbet corridor is 8 kilometers by 3.5 kilometers. So not only do they have Sherbet and gold swarm, they've got the ace in the hole, the humdinger, and the sunrise, which are in that same vicinity of where you could have one powerful mineralizing system causing it all. Then they expanded their claim blocks. This is a very aggressively run company that's got great people involved, and they're doing great work. And yet, as I said, to start this out, the company only has a about a $71 million valuation, which based on when you get a success story in the Golden Triangle, they turn out a lot better than a $71 million valuation. So I started out by saying I think that this company has the one of the best new discoveries in the Golden Triangle. And the more work they do, the more confidence I get in that comment. And if they have a very important discovery in such a prolific and spectacular region as the Golden Triangle, they're going to become a household name amongst the junior mining investors and with major mining companies. And I think that's why you want to do your homework. And this company gives you great information to do that homework. I hope that I could start out some of that by inviting you to check out the interviews that I've done with their management and their geological team. And then, of course, go to their website, look at all their news releases, read those news releases, because it'll give you a lot of great insights into what they're doing. And, like I said, to be looking at something like this that is not trading much above its 52-week low, your timing is very good. Another thing that could be a good catalyst is I think that gold is just looking for an excuse to go much higher. And when you get new investors into this space, there's not a lot of great stories like Goliath, but I think they have something very special. So as always, I want you to know that my show's for information purposes only. I don't do buying or selling recommendations. That's important for you to speak with your financial advisors to assess that. Again, do that homework. Sponsors pay me a fee to be sponsors so that I can put out a lot of good content and do the homework that I need to do in order to be well informed about the company. So I'm very grateful to have Goliath as a sponsor, and I intend to put out a lot of content about what they're doing from here forward. And so on that note, as I said, information purposes only, not buying or selling recommendations. Do your homework. And if you do that homework, I think you'll be very impressed with what Goliath has. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.